Hey, you're listening to Births at Home, the podcast. I'm your host, Esmeralda, the home birth doula, and today we are going to hear from a guest. Her name is Debbie, and she is an aspiring doula in training. She is going to tell us about how she got into home birth and her home birth story with her now 2-year-old. So let's get Debbie on and listen to her story. Thanks for coming on. If you just want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself so that everyone listening can know who you are.
Okay. I'm Debbie Friedel. My husband is, we've been married for almost 17 years. That's us right there.
Mhm.
We have 3 children. I'm a stay-at-home homeschool mom. And so we've been living on one income for a long time. Um, I, my first, he just turned 15,
Oh,
like last
wow.
week. And my youngest is 2.
Mhm.
So lots of years without babies in between,
Mhm.
not understanding why, but
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
good. We figured it out, and I'll be 40 on Friday actually. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Awesome. I love that. So,
Yeah.
how
I am a
exactly?
doula, and I'm a doula in training. So
Oh,
with Elite Doula and Company.
okay.
So I'm working through that. It's a long process because it's an all-encompassed training. So it's
Mhm.
not just labor, it's birth education and bereavement and all the
Okay.
things that doulas can do. I'll be trained in it. I just have to figure out where my niche is.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And how did you get into kind of the birth work? Did you get into the doula side first or the home birth side first?
The home birth side first because so my first was induced because pre-ruptured membranes. I lost all the water and they were like, "Oh, we need to start Pitocin." So I went to
Hmm.
the hospital like you're supposed to, you know, 24 hours, get the baby out,
Yeah.
and ended up begging for a C-section because I pushed for 2 hours and that baby wasn't going anywhere.
Hmm.
Um, it only took me 10 years to figure out that that wasn't the way it was supposed to go. So my second one was a scheduled C-section. Um, my first one was almost 10 pounds, 23 inches
Oh,
long. So
wow.
he was a giant baby. They pushed him out of the OR and said, "Congratulations, you had a toddler." So that was part of my process for um saying it was okay that I had to have a C-section because the stories of shoulder dystocia and vacuum births and things like that, it made me fearful of what could have happened if I had continued to
Hmm.
push a 10-pound baby with a 15-inch head.
Yeah.
It was always, it's okay. It was in God's plan that I had to have a C-section. But then um, I started learning more and more, and I was like, maybe it wasn't.
Hmm.
But God worked it for good because I serve him and I love him. So
Hmm.
I learned a lot after 10 years.
Hmm.
So I actually in 2018 I started working with a functional wellness nutritionist. She wasn't a doctor at the time, she is now. Um, but not only was my progesterone in the toilet, but I was never diagnosed with a thyroid problem. I had a thyroid problem. All the things that could go wrong with a female body in their 30s, that's what I had going on for me. So within 6 months of being on progesterone with her, I got pregnant and then I
Wow. Hmm.
miscarried at 8 weeks. And then it was very early. So I went to the OB that I was, um, I guess somebody had referred me over to the doctor over in Statesville, and I was with him. And by that point, the test had come back negative, so they didn't even see that I had
Mm.
been pregnant.
Yeah.
Um, but then I got pregnant again in September, and I was over the moon, ready, rainbow baby. This is the one. So I got in with the same OB that had taken care of the last miscarriage, and everything was great. I went in for my 16-week appointment, and he started looking for the heart rate, the
Mm-hmm.
heartbeat, and he couldn't find it with a Doppler. So he's like, okay, no big deal. We'll just get the ultrasound in here and make sure everything is okay. Um, there was no blood flow. His heart had stopped just a few days before. Um, so I was all alone at that appointment. I was not expecting
Oh
to have to
no.
be there and get that news all by myself. So I called my husband and we made plans. We had my grandmother take our older two kids and we had to go to the hospital. Um, so I gave birth to my sleeping baby. He was palm of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So perfect. His little ears, his little hands, his little fingers, everything about him was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely perfect. Um, the we guess that my progesterone was just too low
Okay.
because the placenta, he did a partial DNC in the room instead of taking
Mm-hmm.
me to the OR. He just did it inside the room with sterile equipment, and he said he was looking for the rest of the placenta because
Mm-hmm.
he just said it was too small and he thought it was coming out in pieces, but that's just it. There was no more placenta.
Okay.
So I knew that even though he told me at 12 weeks that it made no difference how much progesterone I took after 12 weeks, that it wouldn't make a difference. It made all the difference in my
Mm-hmm.
subsequent pregnancy to be on progesterone for 37 weeks
Okay.
because my body, whether it's my age or my nutrition, whatever it is, my body was just not ready to let the placenta take over progesterone production until later on in the pregnancy.
Okay.
And I wasn't comfortable getting off of it until my midwife said, "Okay, you're good."
Yeah.
Um, so the reason I went for home birth is the OB that took care of that stillborn, his name was Dawson. He was my little angel baby now. Um, so that OB got on board with the only birth center left in North Carolina now. So
Okay.
he's like the OB in charge of the home birth, not home birth, the birthing center over
Mm-hmm.
in Statesville. Um, when I called, I was 6 weeks, I mean, 4 or 5 weeks pregnant. I was not very pregnant at all.
Mm-hmm.
You just know when you've been through loss, you know when you're pregnant and you're like, okay, I need to make sure the baby's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get in with offices and nobody will accept me because it's too early. They don't want to see me till 8 or 9 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just want to make sure everything's okay. Like
Yeah.
there's something I need to do to make sure my baby stays in my belly. So I called over to the birthing center and I said, "Hi, Dr. Corsi was my doctor. I need to be able to see him." And they said, "I'm sorry, he doesn't take VBACs. Um, he only takes two VBACs a month." My
Mm-hmm.
due date was September 4th. So I'm like, you don't have any VBAC scheduled for September?
Yeah.
So it's like there's something that was red flagging them from when I told them that they didn't want to take me on. So
Mm-hmm.
I went to my functional wellness practitioner. She made the phone call. She said, "You saw her through her miscarriages, so I need you to see her as a patient now."
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of pushed me in as a patient. Um, it was 2021, so everyone's like the medical field is all masks.
Yeah.
Don't take it off. Like I was alone in the room all by myself. You're not allowed to take off the mask. I was like, you don't understand. Um, so the service I got as a patient, face to face with the nurses, with the OB, just it was not friendly at all.
Mm-hmm.
They were not caring. It was like I was just a number coming in to the office,
Yeah.
especially because I was VBAC and not a midwife client. They're like, you're just gonna have to do it at the hospital, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I was like, don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the the final straw for me was at my 18-week scan. Um, I had been through two miscarriages. It's one at
Hmm.
16 weeks. I was like, I want to know that my baby's okay. And
Yeah.
the ultrasound tech was so cold. She didn't give me
Mm,
any information. She just started doing it, and then she like flipped the screen and let me see, but I wasn't able to take off my mask, and I had to wait on her to say, okay, there's the heart. She wouldn't give
yeah.
me any information. She's so cold. I was like,
Hmm.
I just want to make sure my baby's alive.
Yeah.
And then I went into the room with the nurse, and I started going over some things that I wanted to make sure they were on board with my birth plan. I
Hmm.
said, I don't want to do the gestational diabetes test. Just because I'm fat doesn't mean I'm at more risk than anyone else, and I haven't had a history of it.
Hmm.
So I wanted to pass that. I'll do a glucose monitoring, which is what I ended up doing. And then GBS testing. With my first two births, they flagged me as GBS positive, but I know I was not positive at the time of birth. So
Mm,
it in my head, at 37 weeks, you can't say that I'm positive for something and say you have to go through this, the antibiotics, and your child has to get antibiotics just because of a test that could be negative or positive 3 weeks later.
yeah.
Um, so it didn't make sense in my mind. And I was only 18 weeks. It's not like they didn't have time to inform me and try to talk me over to their side of things.
Yeah.
The very first response I got from the nurse was, "Oh no, you can't do that." She didn't care about the gestational diabetes. She said, "Oh, if you don't GBS test, we'll have to put your baby in isolation."
Oh my
I was
God.
like, "My baby? You just said it was my baby. You'd
Uh-huh.
be putting my baby in isolation because I refused a test?" And it's not like I wouldn't be on board with antibiotics if I felt like it was necessary at the time, but like they're already
Yeah.
like closing my box in that I can't do things that I
Hmm.
feel is more necessary. I
Yeah.
mean, after you lose a baby, especially in the second trimester, you're like, what went wrong?
Hmm.
I went down the rabbit hole. It's like, what did I do? What did my care provider do? And it opened up an entire world that I didn't know was there.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's just at 18 weeks, I looked at the OB after he came in. I was like, I think I'm gonna research home birth. And would you be on board with concurrent care? Because as far as I know, a lot of first time, second time moms that are low risk, they're able
Hmm.
to do concurrent care with their provider, you know, along
Yeah.
with the home birth. In North Carolina, you're not supposed to have an assisted home birth. It's illegal somehow. Um, my midwife, it was very important that I knew that she wasn't licensed and that she isn't licensed because it would be considered a felony if she was caught, and it's a
Hmm.
misdemeanor if she's not licensed. So she's at less risk not being licensed here in North Carolina.
Mm,
So as soon as I said the word home birth, he put his hands up and he said, I'm done.
mm,
You're no longer my patient.
mhm.
He sent me a certified letter saying that I was discharged from the practice for ignoring medical advice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I got on the phone. Well, actually, I got on Facebook
Mhm.
on a Earthly Wellness post,
Okay.
and they were posting something about postpartum or something. And I was just kind of venting, like, I wish this information had been available when I was pregnant with my oldest. I would have probably been more on board with questioning the system and doing what was best for him at the time. Um, and somebody from Chapel Hill had private messaged me and said, "Hey, this is my midwife. Maybe you can get in touch with her." And I'm
Mm,
on like the opposite side I'm in the foothills of North Carolina, so Raleigh and we're about 3 or 4 hours apart.
okay.
So I got in touch with that midwife, and she's like, "You're right on the outside of my service area, so let me get you to this midwife." And
Okay.
she got me in touch with her, and Mama was like, she was a godsend. I got on the
Mm,
phone with her. I started explaining to her my situation, my losses. This is my fifth pregnancy. I'm 37, so like on top of having 2 C-sections and being overweight. I'm also 37, so I'm like in the highest risk bracket that the medical system puts on you, right?
Mhm.
Um, she's like, let's do it. I said, yes, when can we meet? So I took my husband with me to lunch with her, and every worry that he had, she was able to answer all his questions and just put him at ease. And I was
Mhm.
already like, this is the only way I can do this because I want to
Yeah.
birth a baby. I don't want to be in don't want to have a C-section forced on me because there's no one in the area. I called all the OB offices. Your VBAC candidate? Nope, we don't do VBACs here. We don't do VBACs here. That's really all I got in an
Mhm.
hour circumference from where I live.
Yeah.
All the OBs said, nope, we don't do VBACs. Not even
Mhm.
on a case by case basis. Like they didn't even want to interview me before they found out,
Nope.
all the other stuff. Nope. So I was so thankful to find her. Um,
Mhm.
so the prenatal care by itself was like night and day. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that I was going to be able to sit in her office with her and her apprentices for an hour, hour and a half,
Mhm.
and we were able to break down all of my past records. And in that breaking, I've never read my medical records before because
Mm.
I mean, I didn't, as far as complications are concerned, like I had healthy babies.
Yeah.
So there was no reason for me to get a copy of my medical records and read through them to make sure everything was good. Um, I should have. Because so my oldest was 13 at the time. I found out that in my medical records they lied about a prescription they put me on. They had put me on Valtrex at week 36 with my
Mhm.
first because I had a lesion and they wanted to make sure that it wasn't genital herpes.
Oh,
Even though the
wow.
blood test had come back negative, I was like, if the blood test was negative, why are you treating me for genital herpes if I don't have genital
Yeah.
herpes? And like the midwife tried to validate herself inside my
Mhm.
medical records, like putting inside there that I wasn't understanding what she was trying to say. So that
Mhm.
was like the red flag number one. Like, no wonder somebody gets a hold of my records and reads that, and I'm already a non-compliant patient there.
Yeah.
And then read about the birth. The doctor wrote that I pushed for 1 hour, which was a lie. I pushed for 2.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then that patient requested C-section due to poor maternal effort. Yeah. As
I
soon as
love when they blame it on the woman.
it was all
It's
my
our fault.
fault, because I asked for them to turn off the epidural while I was back laboring and pushing on my
Mhm.
back. The nurse just came in and said, "Oh, we're gonna turn this off so you feel when to push." I'm like, I didn't know that's how it works. But I didn't ask questions because,
Mhm.
they knew better.
Yeah.
Um, but when I read that 13 years later, I was like, how are they able to do this to women? It's like, no
Mhm.
wonder nobody wants to see me as a patient.
Yeah.
They think I can't handle childbirth. You can't
Mhm.
tell, but I'm a natural redhead. Like my pain tolerance, I mean, it's not that it's a thing during birth, but like if they had given me a chance to actually
Yeah.
labor the way I should have, like go into labor naturally, I know now because I've
Mhm.
been through it that
Yeah.
I could have home birthed or at least unmedicated birthed my first baby without
Mhm.
any issues. Um, so I was due September 4th. At 37 weeks, my midwife said, you need to go ahead and get off progesterone because if
Mhm.
you're still on progesterone while you're full term, it can actually prolong labor from starting. Um,
Mhm.
so you want those levels a little lower when the labor is starting to begin. So I was waiting. I was like 40 weeks. My water broke with my first at 40
Mhm.
weeks, like the day before I was
Okay.
40 weeks. So, and it was pop and gush. It was,
Mhm.
I knew. Um, so it was just a waiting. It was a waiting game. Like trying not to get, um, I know a lot of women first time, especially, it was like, we're at 40 weeks. We need to have a baby now. Like, we need to do everything it takes to get a baby. The only
Yeah.
thing I did to try to naturally induce was acupuncture,
Okay.
chiropractic and acupuncture. And she said, this only works if your body is ready to labor.
Yeah.
So I did it 3 times that week and nothing. So it was like, okay, it's not going to start on its own. So 30, was it 40 weeks, 5 days, started having contractions. I called the midwife to the house and she sat there with me. We monitored every 10 to 15 minutes and it just petered out. Like
Mm.
nothing happened.
Yeah.
Um, we weren't even sure if my water had broken. The test strips would not give us a conclusive answer.
Hmm.
Um, so he waited 2 more days and then he went into he said, it's time to go, Mom. So it started around 2 p.m. Called my husband. I said, it's starting for real this time. I can tell there's a big difference. So I
Hmm.
was taking the tinctures that the midwife had given me. Um, and by 7 o'clock, it was to the point where during a contraction, I couldn't talk. So
Mm.
my husband called the midwife. She didn't show up till 2 hours later, but she was an hour away anyway. Um,
Okay.
so I had done hypnobirthing, hypnobabies in order to prep for birth. So my mindset was already like, just breathe, let the contractions come over you.
Hmm.
Um, so contractions were no big deal. Like, I didn't feel any pain through any of them. It took all of me to be inside myself and just let them roll over.
Yeah.
Um, so we got the pool set up, midwife, and all three of her apprentices were there with me. So it's like
Mm.
4 birth attendants plus my husband and me. We set up the birth pool. Um, transition hit, like,
Hmm.
I don't even know what time, like from transition to birth, like there's got to be like a 6 hour window somehow because it started at like 1 a.m. But I
Hmm.
don't remember it being that long. Like I feel like I was in transition. I had to get up out of the pool, walk to the bed, and then I had a baby 13 minutes later. Like I don't remember the span of time that happened.
Yeah.
But transition, like I felt that because I had no medication, I didn't have anything going on. Like I felt the contractions start at the bottom of my belly, and then when they
Mm.
started coming up to the top, and I felt the downward motion, I was like,
Oh,
"Oh
wow.
crap! This is where it's going to happen. I'm going to have to push this baby out." And all of a sudden, I couldn't do it. Like I
Hmm.
started saying, "I can't do this. I can't do this."
Hmm.
Um, one of the midwife apprentices, she looked me in the eye. She said, "Debbie, you're already doing this." My husband's in my ear. He said, "You're doing this, sweetheart.
Hmm.
There's nothing you can do other than do what you're doing." So it
Yeah.
got me back in my headspace, and I was listening to my praise music on the TV, and then Mama checked me, and she said that the I don't know if it was like a cervical lip or it was my pubic bone or something, but there was something was hampering him from coming down.
Hmm.
So I had to get up out of the tub and my husband had to carry me. We're like every minute or two now, like there's
Hmm.
no time in between that I'm not contracting. So he
Yeah.
had to lift me up. His back almost threw out, walking me down the
Oh,
hallway
no.
to the bedroom. Um, got me into the bed. The one position that I did not want to be on was on my back. And of course, that's the only way that I could be for them to make sure that he was safe and everything was positioned okay. So he had his hand like this.
Oh.
My midwife didn't realize that. She thought it was just like this. So she pinched his hand and it went down. So she's
Hmm.
like, okay, we got it out. What ended up happening was he was like this and he pulled it over here. So it just went from one side of his face to the other. So when I was on my back, they had to pull his arm through, get his arm out, and then his head, and then I had to flip to all fours and just he fell out.
Mm.
My 10-pound, 2-ounce baby.
Wow, I love that home birth story. That's amazing.
Oh, and I didn't know that since I had anterior placenta, which after losses, that's the hardest thing, not knowing
Mhm.
if your baby's okay, you can't feel him move. It was
Yeah.
probably 24, 25 weeks before I felt him move.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
it was really, it was an exercise in faith to get the fear
Mhm.
out. Um,
Yeah.
but I had the placenta was all the way up the top of my uterus. So
Okay.
when he came out, I couldn't pull him up to my chest. He could only be like
Mhm.
on my belly. And I think that's what caused some hemorrhaging because
Mm.
we pulled on it not knowing how short the cord was.
Yeah.
So I ended up with a Pitocin shot and she had to get up there manually pulling clots out. And that
Mm.
was the worst part of the entire labor completely.
I'm so glad that you were able to find someone who was willing to work with you, even though you had all of these not really barriers, but in the medical system, they are so many barriers that they put on you. So I just love how she was able to accommodate everything and make it really normalized that there's not all of these barriers and it's very individualized. You can't just put like a generalization on women. You have to look at their own individual like background and circumstances, look into their medical history and actually know them before just going and saying, "You can't do that. You
Yeah.
can't do this." So, yeah, I really love that you were able to find someone who was able to accommodate for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the type of person though, like you tell me I can't do something, I'm like,
Mhm.
really? You think I can't?
You sure?
So I use my home birth. I wear the home birth mama shirts. I wear my H back mama shirts. Like I wear
Mhm.
them any chance I get because like it's a huge flex for me. Like
Yeah.
I hear it all the time. Oh, once a C-section, always a C-section. And
Mhm.
then you got people that want to say, it wasn't the easy way out taking the C-section, but so many want to schedule their C-sections because they can pick the date and there's not a lot of
Yeah.
variables going on. I'm like, you just knew how
Mhm.
awesome it can be.
Yeah.
Um, Nobody made me feel like I was any less of a mom because I had two C-sections before. But
Mhm.
proving to myself that my body wasn't broken was so important to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I had my largest baby at in my bed in my home with my husband right there.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would change was just do a little more research on the cord and being able to see if there's anything I can do pre-conception or during
Mhm.
pregnancy that will help lengthen it or just know the position of the placenta a little better when
Yeah.
we birth that we're not pulling on it and things like that. That's the only thing I would change. As soon as it was over, I was like, let's do that again. My husband's like, no.
No, thanks. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always interesting that you don't really hear a lot of people who have hospital births say they wanna experience that again. It's usually, "I never wanna experience that
Oh
again, it was
yeah.
so traumatic." And
Yes.
with home births, moms have the baby and they're like, "Let's do it again," right after. There was
Yep.
no issue, they loved it. So, that alone is just something that should make more people kind of light bulb moment, maybe I should look into home birth a little bit more, just
Yeah.
that alone.
I'm in a Facebook group on home birth after cesarean because
Mhm.
it's a huge question across the nation. Like,
Yeah.
why can't I have not just a home birth, but just a vaginal birth after a C-section? Why is it so complicated?
Mhm.
Um, I see a lot of negative experiences, like transfers from home. Um, I feel like we sometimes oversimplify
Yeah.
what a transfer is and why it had to take place.
Mhm.
As much as we want to stay outside the hospital, are we doing the physical and mental work that needs to
Yeah.
happen to
Mhm.
prepare for a 40-hour labor, for a
Mhm.
5-day labor? Like, are we really prepared? Or are we living in a society that's always rush, rush, rush? Oh, this is
Yeah.
just part of life. Let's get it over with and be done with it.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times I hear people transferring to the hospital just to get rest with an
Yeah.
epidural. And just not in my experience, not in my wheelhouse, but that's one thing in my doula practice I would like to be able to work with women to realize the preparation that needs to take place. You can't just say, "Oh, I trust this person," or "I have a
Mhm.
doula, they're going to take care of me." No,
Yeah.
it's work, it's hard work for mom.
Mhm.
And mom
Yeah.
and dad have to be on the same page. And in my practice as a doula, mom and dad need to be on the same page and they have work to do. Like
Yeah.
I'll do everything in my power to get them educated to make the right decisions for their situation, because their
Mhm.
situation is not my situation. The
Yeah.
ideal birth may not be a home birth, and that's okay. Um, but I want to be available to empower others to take their authority back, because that
Yeah.
that was stolen from me and I didn't even realize I was giving it away. I think that's a big
Mhm.
thing. Women don't realize they're giving their authority away.
Yeah, absolutely, they don't. So, do you have anywhere where people can find you for your doula services?
I don't have a whole lot of social media interactions just yet because I am still in training.
Yeah.
But I do have an Instagram and a Facebook page. It's called Rose of Sharon Doula.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
mother-in-law's name was Sharon, and we lost her in 2012. So Rose of
Mm,
Sharon.
that's a great name. I'll go ahead and share all of your links down below. So if anyone wants to go and find you, they can easily just click on the link and go to your page and follow you on your social medias.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share. This is great.
Of course, I really want this platform to just be a space for women to be able to share their home birth stories. Mm, okay, well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I absolutely loved Debbie's story. I hope you all loved her story as well. I am just so thankful that we have midwives in most of our areas who are just like the midwife that Debbie had and can accommodate for their clients and not put these barriers around them when they aren't always necessary. There is a lot of generalization, especially in the medical birth world, where if you have this one label, you automatically fall under the category of not allowed to do this or not able to do this. And really, it shouldn't be that way. It should all be individualized. We should really be looking at people's medical history, diet, lifestyle, all of these different aspects before just automatically categorizing them as high risk, automatic C-section, or any of these other labels, and just telling women that they're not able to have a home birth because of XYZ. We need to look at the broader picture when it comes to birth because there's really so many circumstances where a woman might have these labels in the hospital, but for a home birth, she's perfectly fine. That's not always the case, but most of the time it is. So if you're listening to this and you've been given a high risk label or any type of label in the hospital in the past, and you believe that that might put you into a can't have a home birth category, I would suggest to go to a midwife, a local midwife, and tell them all of your information, give them your background, let them know everything, and just see what they say. You might not be considered high risk to that midwife. There might be things you guys can go around or can compromise to make sure that you have your home birth that you want. There's no harm in just checking and asking questions, and that way you kind of know if you really should be given these labels or not. So if you enjoyed listening to that story, please leave us a review and let us know how you like this podcast. If you are really enjoying this podcast, I would love for you to join our private community over on Patreon. We do have three separate tiers that you can join. All of them have added benefits. The first tier is the book club, where we read a new birth book every month. The second tier has secret podcast episodes that you are not going to hear on Spotify or on Apple. The only place you'll hear them is on Patreon. So you'll get exclusive secret podcast episodes. And then the very last tier will have all of that plus live workshops that I'll be hosting every month with live Q&A sessions with me. So you get a lot more one-on-one time with me at a very low monthly cost. Each of those are very low costs, so you can choose whichever you'd like. If you want to choose the lowest, that's perfectly fine. Come hang out with us in our book club. I would love that. Or if you want to get all of those benefits, you can choose the highest one and you get everything. So that link will be down below, and I hope you will join us on that Patreon community. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.